Hello everybody, welcome to Deluxe Collectibles, and today we're going to be doing my reaction and review for Amphibia Season 2, Episode 5, Swamp and Sensibility, and then Wax Museum, which I'm sure everyone is super excited for Wax Museum because that's the episode where we get to see Alex Hirsch from Gravity Falls cross over to the Amphibia universe, and I am super excited to watch that episode. So if you would like to see my reaction to both of these episodes, then be sure to go down below to the top of the description of this video where you'll find a link leading you over to Google Photos where you'll be able to watch my full uncut reaction to the episode, and then you can come back over here if you want to see my review for both episodes. But without further ado, we're going to get into the review here. It will be spoiler filled, so keep that in mind and make sure you watch the episodes beforehand. But let's get into it here. So we'll go over the first episode here, Swamp and Sensibility, and I've got my laptop here with the video up and then also some notes as well, just so I don't miss out on anything from the episode. But basically the episode is about, so they're continuing their journey and they wind up stumbling upon a place called Ribbit Vale, and it's basically where they find Wally, who is from, of course, where they come from, and they learn that Wally is kind of leading this double life, sort of, where he goes back home to his family and his family is like rich, and he kind of has to pretend to be this fancy type of person. Meanwhile, back home, he's like a little bit of more of like a just lax personality who just kind of likes to sit around and yeah, so he doesn't really fit too well into like his actual family, so they kind of have to go through kind of, it's more so Anne who's kind of trying to convince him that it would be good to kind of like talk to his family about it, let them know how he really is, and then they'll accept him for who he is. Because at the beginning of the episode, Anne's watching a movie called From Point to Poppin', which, fantastic film, and basically the person's like doing ballet, and then they're like, nah, but I like hip-hop, and then the mom's like, I accept you for that, and that's basically kind of what's leading into this conclusion that, oh, don't worry, they'll accept you no matter what. And basically they wind up kind of going through, well, they explore through the mansion because they wind up going to Wally's mansion, and it's pretty huge. I mean, it's enormous, and they see some pretty creepy stuff. Of course, you're in a rich mansion, you're just bound to see some creepy things going on. They see like kind of like a bathhouse almost sort of thing where everyone's just bathing in there, a bunch of toads, and then you see some frogs kind of beating up a chair basically, so just normal stuff completely. And then we get to see these like peacocks basically just like standing around this frog who's in a peacock costume, and then he just kind of goes shh, and it's like, okay, I'm just gonna walk away. So yeah, it's a pretty funny moment. I actually really enjoyed that. And then we cut back to Anne and what's his name? Why am I already forgetting his name? Wally. And by the way, Wally's father's name is Wigbert as well, because why wouldn't it be? You gotta have Wigbert. And basically Wally shows Anne that he has this little like pet basically that he used to ride on as a little tadpole basically named Fiddleleaf, and that winds up coming into the episode later on. But anyway, he talks to her about that, and he's just kind of letting her know all of the issues, how he can't really come out to his family as who he truly is. But Anne's like, you know what, I'm just gonna take this into my own hands, and she just basically takes out her phone and shows a video that she edited together with some of course, Wally's best moments, like bathing in the public, like, fountain, and she shows that to, Wally's father, and Wally's dad is like, yeah, no, we don't accept you for this, I'm sorry. And then Wally retaliates by doing something pretty epic. It's like, yeah, he twirls a string around like a knife, and then he starts throwing it around, and then he winds up throwing it into something which just winds up challenging the family basically, so he can leave the family instead of them just straight up like disowning him basically, so he can be himself. And he winds up talking to Anne, being like, hey, why'd you do that? Like, that wasn't cool. And so they basically go through all of that, and they kind of have a talk, and then they come to this challenge, and it's really cool. They have an awesome cameo here from Kermit the Frog, who does a voice for a character called Crumpet, who is basically like the announcer for this like event going on, and I thought that was really great. I love even the way they're animated, like kind of moving the arms around. It feels like a puppet, and I think that was just really cool. The eyes as well, they just absolutely nailed it. So really fantastic little cameo there for the episode. I really enjoyed that. And then we get to see Wigbert basically has his steed that he's going to be riding, and then Wally, of course, has Fiddleleaf, who looks substantially cuter to that other one, of course. The other one has like a skull and everything, and it's like, okay, Wally, you might have to accept that you might be defeated in this challenge. But he winds up basically saying that no, you can't use Fiddleleaf because she's property of her family name, so you're going to have to find some other steed to ride. And of course, Anne, feeling bad for what she did, kind of causing this whole catastrophe, winds up saying, hey, don't worry, I'll just be your steed, which honestly is pretty funny. It's funny to see Wally just riding around on Anne facing this guy in basically a glorified game of croquet, and it's really funny. Even one of the faces that Anne makes, she's just so determined to win this, and Wally's just like, okay, well, like, hold off a little bit though. He's still my dad. Like, we don't need to annihilate him. But basically they go through all of that, and they're going through the game, a little bit of a montage of some sorts, and then they're going, and you think that Wigbert's going to wind up scoring the winning point, but it winds up bouncing off the post and going back, giving them a second chance and a second wind, and they wind up getting the croquet ball right through and blowing up a mushroom and winning, which I love the blowing up because, like, Kermit's just kind of waving in the wind of it because he's like a puppet basically, and I really enjoyed that. I thought it was just really great. So much great detail there. And then we get to see Wally go over to his dad, and they basically talk it out, and Wigbert's like, are you really gonna have to leave the family? Because he really doesn't want to have to, like, kind of disown his son, but it's kind of like to preserve their name. But they wind up reconciling, and Wally still gets to be a part of the family while still getting to be himself. And then the dad kind of says he actually used to play the jugs, and he pulls up the grass, and then you see as a secret stash there, and they wind up playing a song right at the end, and that winds up concluding the episode. And, well, it concludes, it's just about to, and then you see one of the peacocks just go absolutely bananas, and just, it looks like it's about to eat them all basically, but that's where we end the episode, and I enjoyed that episode quite a bit. I don't think I liked it more than Wax Museum, which I'll of course get into the details of Wax Museum, but this was overall still a good episode. I enjoyed getting to see more character development with Wally. It's always nice to get that with some of the side characters who aren't always on screen, of course, but it's cool to kind of flesh it out more, make the world feel more broad, of course, bringing in this new place, Ribbit Vale. So I enjoyed the episode overall. I thought it was really well done. I like them kind of getting to see what the rich life is like. Yeah, I just overall really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well done, and yeah, good episode overall. So now we're going to move on to Wax Museum. I'm sure the one that you've all been waiting for. It was amazing. It was such a good episode. We'll go through it like detail by detail, but basically, so the episode winds up starting with they're entering this town basically called Stony Gulch, where travelers are welcome. It's kind of like a tourist trap, hence why it makes so much sense to have Stan here, from Gravity Falls, of course, because you have the Mystery Shack in that universe, and we basically get to see they're kind of looking around now. Anne has to kind of stay hidden because she's kind of like, of course, she's not something too normal in their world, and not everywhere has, of course, seen her and been exposed to her, so she winds up taking off her hood at one point, like right near the beginning of the episode, and kind of like doing something, and these like crowd of people are like, at first they're scared of her, but then they're like, oh yeah, mom, pay the freak to like dance, and it's like, okay, and then Anne basically takes advantage of this and winds up making a ton of money, a bucket of money specifically, a literal bucket, and she makes that, and it's really cool. So they get to make some money, so they get to go shopping in some of these stores, because they're not really able to shop in most of the stores. They have to do more so window shopping, because Hot Pop does not have too much dough in his pocket, but they wind up stumbling across this like shop, which is basically the Mystery Shack, I would say. I forget what is the exact name of it. Yes, the Curiosity Hut, which I have to say, the design of the actual hut looks really fantastic. It reminds me a lot of the Mystery Shack, which of course is purposeful, and I think that's really cool. So we get to see them enter. You get to see some cool little Easter eggs. One of them, for instance, is you get to see the gnomes, but now they're Fromes, because they're frog gnomes, of course, and we get to see that basically. And then they're just kind of going through the shop, and then you get to see them come across a, like, youth that, like, I already knew that it was Grunkle Stan, or this version of Grunkle Stan, basically, who they actually call Mr. Pawns, which is pretty funny. Or they don't call him that, they call him the Curator, but then later on in the episode you hear Zeus, Frog Zeus, call him Mr. Pawns. But they stumble across him and they think he's one of the statues at first, but then he winds up, course, coming to life, and it's a really funny moment. And I love how he owns a wax museum, because of course you had the episode of Gravity Falls where Mabel made the wax version of Stan, and then you had all the wax versions like Larry King and everything, like attacking Dipper and Mabel. So I kind of like that. It's a subtle little reference back to that moment there. So we get to see the Curator here basically showing off everything in his shop, and of course it's just a bunch of stuff that you would think is so unbelievable that it's fake, but you wind up finding out that it's actually real stuff just frozen in wax. And one of them's pretty funny. It's Airbug, and it's a bug who just has to play basketball, similar to a certain Airbud, of course. But I thought that that was really cool. A few cool little funny puns there. And then we get to see there's one moment where he just kind of disappears. He throws like a smoke grenade basically, but then you see him running behind like one of the wax statues, which is really funny. And yeah, you get to see some pretty creepy looking creatures in this, kind of setting up that we're probably going to see them come back to life in this moment. But then Anne spots a certain part of the shop where it has this artifact section, and you get to see one of the artifacts is a skip man, aka a Walkman, which I'm sure some people watching this actually wouldn't know what a Walkman is, so they might not get that reference, anybody watching the episode, but that's what it's meant to be, like an old, basically, iPod, really. Even though iPods are kind of old at this point, I think there's new ones, but more so you use your iPhone or your phone just primarily to listen to music. But it's pretty cool. You got to see some of that stuff. Now, there is a glass sort of container with this creature with like one eye taken out, and I swear I think that's a reference to something specifically. And in the background you even get to see a photo of something that looks to be like a Loch Ness monster, which could also be a reference back to one of the ones that appeared in Gravity Falls. So I'd be interested to hear if any of you guys spotted any extra Easter eggs that I could have missed out on. Be sure to let me know down below. But then we get to see Stan come out, and it's cool. You get to see a little like painting of like a triangle in the background, hinting towards, of course, Bill Cipher, which honestly, if you watch the reaction, you would have seen that at one point I kind of thought that maybe this version of Stan here could be like kind of possessed by Bill Cipher, because even the eyes kind of look like that. And he kind of acts a little bit crazier than Stan normally would, but we don't get to see that come to fruition in the episode. But we also don't know if this character could make a return at some point, so there is potential for them to kind of expand upon the Gravity Falls cast within the episode and just having other characters in future adventures. But Anne basically winds up wanting to buy the Skip Man from Stan, and or the Curator. I keep calling him Stan, but Curator, I'm sure you know what I mean. But she basically winds up wanting to buy this off of him, and he tells her a ridiculous price, and they're like, can we make up a deal? And he's like, well, do you have anything like super like crazy looking or anything that I could show off in the Curiosity store? And basically she winds up taking off road and saying, well, I can be the thing that you show off in the store. And he's like, of course, amazed, because she's like something you've never seen before, and or any of the frogs have seen before. And basically they wind up making a deal to do that in exchange for the Skip Man. But then when Anne leaves, you can see he's kind of looking a little bit maniacal, kind of also hinting towards maybe he's a little bit sketchy, more sketchy than Stan usually is. But then we get to see a cameo from Frog Zeus, which is just absolutely amazing. He talks about like alternate universe or parallel universes where you're like someone else, and like of course hinting towards the Gravity Falls universe. And then it's really funny, Stan rebuttals by saying like, Zeus, have you been licking yourself today? And then he's like, oh yeah, you got me, Grunkle Stan. And then he's just licking himself in the background, and I'm like, it's pretty funny. It's just so great. Like the voice of Alex Hirsch, like all the different voices he can kind of do, just so great, so great, really talented. And so that was really fun to get to see. We get to see Anne go back to, of course, Hot Pop, Sprig, and Polly, and kind of explain to them what she's gonna do, and they're of course not really up for it, but she winds up sneaking out late at night and going back to the Curator shop and meeting up with him, and and then he's standing there just like holding a torch just super maniacally, and she's just like, yeah, nothing suspicious going on here. So he winds up leading her in, basically showing her this stage that she's going to be on, and she's just kind of explaining how she'll put on a show for all of them. But then he explains how everything here that looks to be just kind of like wax fake statues is actually all real things that he's just frozen in wax. And then, of course, you can kind of see this coming. He sticks a tube basically over Anne so she can't escape, and starts feeding wax through it so that she'll be one of his pieces in his curiosity shop. So it's really interesting. They have a nice kind of heart-to-heart moment, though, where Stan kind of, or curator, kind of shows a nice side to him where he's like, nah, you seem like a nice girl. You didn't really make a mistake or anything, or you're just having an off day. So it is a nice little moment there, but of course he's still absolutely crazy, and Hot Pop winds up getting woken up by some of these figures that wind up falling off into his mouth. He almost chokes, but don't worry, he's perfectly fine. And that's how they wind up realizing that Anne's escaped, and they have to go to the curiosity shop to save her, and they wind up stumbling in. Now, Polly has a bit of an encounter with one of the pieces, wax statues in there, and she's like very intimidated by it, so she kind of tries to intimidate it herself. And we get to see the curator kind of eating some canned meat there. Just all the line delivery from Alex Hirsch as Stan just makes me laugh. Even if it's something that maybe isn't meant to be like really funny, it still comes off as very funny and like sarcastic as well, and just really great. I love it. There's so much charisma in his character. And so we basically get to see that they're filling up the wax there, and then Stan sees them come in, and then and then he sees like Sprig and Hop Pop, and he's like, yeah, I can make a two-headed like frog display sort of thing. So he basically wants to turn them all into wax pieces in his museum. But then you get to see Polly sees one of the creature's eyes moves, and it kind of freaks her out, so she winds up using the torch that they came in with to burn it, and basically burns off the wax, of course, and lets them free. And then they start basically freeing all of the creatures there, which when they free the Fromes, you wind up seeing one of them come out, and I kind of expected this, and it says like Smebulok, and that was just really great. I love seeing a small cameo from Smebulok there. So we've kind of got 3 like cameos there. Now some of the creatures do look kind of like some of the creatures that we've seen in Gravity Falls. I'm not sure if they're directly the same sort of creature, but they definitely give off that Gravity Falls sort of weird Mageddon sort of vibe to them. And then you get to see they all kind of turn on the curator, of course, because he's the one who captured them. They take him into the storage room and shut the door behind them. And it's pretty funny because once the door shuts, you see a bunch of like this red goo come out, and then he's like, don't worry, it's just wax. And that's the curator, because of course you're gonna think it's blood, but don't worry, just wax. The curator could potentially return as a result of that, but we get to see that they wind up freeing Anne, and then Anne's like, I made a mistake, it wasn't really worth it. But then we get to see Sprig wound up smuggling out the Skip Man for her, and of course she's like, oh, Sprig, you're the best. And I'd have to agree. Sprig is pretty darn great. So we get to see Hop Pop kind of scold her a little bit for like, you gotta kind of stay undercover. You can't really like be flaunting around that you're a human, because some people might take advantage of that or not really care for that. But basically, then the episode winds up ending with Anne's like, oh, and you know what features this Skip Man has? And one of the features is a laser. And she winds up shining it in Hop Pop's eye, and it just like kind of burns it. And it's like, oh, okay. What a way to end an episode. I thought we were going to get a little tag for like something to do with a Gravity Falls sort of Easter egg. Maybe Bill at some point or something like that. I really thought that maybe he was going to come out of the storage closet at the end and be kind of fully like the crazy glowing yellow eyes like Bill. So I don't know. There's potential for a return from some of the Gravity Falls characters. Definitely maybe Alex Hirsch in the future. But it would also be cool to get to see Mabel and Dipper come back as like frog sort of kids. So something like that would be nice to see in the future, but I think that's everything I wanted to cover for the episode. It was really fantastic. Like, I really enjoyed this. I felt like they took really full advantage of using Alex Hirsch here in this episode. They really did a good job there, and it really felt like a Gravity Falls sort of themed episode, and I did enjoy that quite a bit. And yeah, I'd be totally open to them returning. Of course, I wouldn't want it to happen too often, because then it's not going to feel like Amphibia anymore. It's going to feel like Gravity Falls. But maybe every few seasons or so, depending on how long the show goes on, it would be really nice to see that kind of happen. Small cameos like that. Maybe even from other Disney shows as well. But I know that I think the creator of Amphibia worked on Gravity Falls, so that also might have been why there was a connection there. And of course, they're both Disney cartoons, so there's also that connection. But yeah, just fantastic. Two great episodes, honestly. I would probably give the first one a 4.5 out of 5, and then the second one definitely a 5 out of 5. Absolutely loved it. I love Gravity Falls. Such a good series, and yeah, just amazing. Two fantastic episodes. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on both episodes down below. Let me know if I missed any Easter eggs as well from either episode, but primarily the Wax Museum, which I'm sure I could have missed something in it. So let me know down below if there was anything, but nonetheless, just thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like and also subscribe to see future Amphibia reactions and reviews. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. I will see you all next time, and always remember, keep on collecting.